I suck at jiu-jitsu. How do I suck less at jiu-jitsu?
I guess to suck less.
The diabolical leader of the headlock squad.
Hey everybody, this is Josh Mckinney, and I just want to welcome you to the newest episode of the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. So, as you can guess from the title, we are back to a Q&A day, or hot takes and Q&A. You know, we like to mix up and do both. And a great place to start was with a hot take. You know, I'm getting more hot takes than questions. Now, people like to just make a statement and then let me riff on it. And so that's where we're at to start our day. And the first statement, the first hot take is having competition team on the back of your shirt is stupid. And I think that this was actually, I think there was a little bit longer of a version of this. I don't know why it only had it to where it ends there. But I think it went on to say, for whatever reason, I don't know why it's not there. I think it went on to say that you are not special. And I get that. You know, I'm sure if you go back into 2017, I'm sure I have a shirt that says competition team on it. You know, a head nod shirt that says competition team on it. But yeah, I do actually agree with this statement that it really doesn't make a ton of sense to differentiate the two. Like, oh, this is our competition team. And the reason I say that is because, so does that make the other people your hobbyist team? Like, oh yeah, these are the hobbyist crew. Like a lot of my people that compete, maybe they compete once a year, once every 2 years. Are they allowed to be on the competition team? They don't compete a lot. They're not competing as much as the dude who's competing once a month. And so I think that, yeah, I buy it. I could see having competition team on the back of your gi or in the back of your shirt or back of whatever, how it's almost this way of trying to differentiate. And I don't know, it's probably not necessary. Ooh, this was a great one. People are getting better at knowing what I will answer and what I'll share. Like, I feel like I got the same amount of questions and hot takes as I normally do when I ask for them, but they were all so usable. And so I thought this was a great one, and you guys will see why. Posting your participation medal that you did not fight for is TikTok generation energy. If you guys don't get the reference, there was a very offensive episode that came out like 2 weeks ago with me and my black belt Rob, and we just attack everybody. Honestly, we have another episode coming out in a week with another one of my black belts that's even more offensive on the same topic. But we just attack everybody born after 9/11. I make the statement that I find that most people born after 9/11 are relatively soft and unlikable. And boy, did the TikTok generation get offended by those statements. That was hurtful for them. They needed the safe space after that one. But it was funny. And back to this original post, or this original hot take, posting your participation medal that you didn't fight for is TikTok generation energy. And for those of you who don't get the context of what this is, a lot of times, especially IBJJF tournaments, you are registered for a specific age group, belt level, and weight class. And oftentimes, you know, if it's a smaller tournament, you'll notice if you're in a specific, you're Master 4 heavyweight purple belt, it's going to be hard for you to get a match. And if you do, most likely it's one match or something like that. And so the idea is there are going to be guys that either they just stay in their weight class and nobody joins, but this is even more common. There will be guys that will go like, oh, there's 2 people in my weight class, but if I moved up a weight class, I would have 0 matches and I would get a gold medal. And there are people that love to do that. And then in that situation, so you don't have any match, you go, you weigh in, 40 pounds under your weight class because you were just fishing for your medal. And then you share the medal on Instagram, that you standing, it's not even you by yourself on the podium. It's you standing in front of the podium, holding your medal with everything kind of out of focus behind you, holding your gold medal that you didn't compete for. Yes, I agree. TikTok generation energy. Now, here's the thing. I'm cool with you sharing that medal and telling everybody, if you say, hey, this was a medal I didn't compete for, it happens. But I'm also even cool with you sharing that medal if you use that medal to sign up for the open class. Because how it works, if you place in your division, you can sign up for the open weight class. You just register, and then whoever's in your belt level and age that day that also placed in their division has the option to sign up for that division too. Now, if you go and do that division, maybe you win it and you double gold, I don't think you need to differentiate that you had no matches in your division. You double golded, right? And that was the purpose of why you signed up in a no-person division. Now, let's say you do that, you get your participation gold, then there's only 4 guys in the open class. You have 1 match, you lose, and now you are gold and bronze, and you went 0-1 on the day. I probably wouldn't post it at all on the gram, but if you did, it does seem morally right to talk about how you're only 0-1 on the day. You had 1 match and you lost. But I don't know. It's weird. Most of some of my worst performances, I got either a participation medal or I went 1-1. And people still congratulate you the same, even when you differentiate. I don't feel like I deserve this. I don't care. Congratulations. So I see it either way. I don't know. Maybe it's just all a long thing to realize that the medals are so irrelevant and so silly. The fact that some guys can go in and not compete for them is very silly. It's very silly to care. I always tell my students, so we as TAC team, we get to participate and we get to win team titles. We were able to win the team title for the St. Louis Open last Saturday and won the gi and the no gi. No gi was down to the last divisions, but we won the gi very handily. And it's always this matter of okay, well, who gets the team trophy, right? Who gets the team trophy? And my guys will be like, Josh, they're offering one of these team trophies to us. We should take it, and then we can have it back at our gym. And I always make fun of that. And I always will tell my students, no. What's our reason for the team trophy? It's simply because somebody has to win it, and we just can't let anybody else have it. We don't want it. We don't need it. My joke after every time I will do a division place, I win some type of hardware, win a belt, win a medal. My joke is always, I'll post it on Instagram. It'll be whatever, up in the display case. And I pull this box that's under my bed out from under my bed, and I stuff another medal in it and then put the lid on and slide it back under. It's because at some point or another in competing for hundreds of medals, literally hundreds of medals, I realized that they're irrelevant, that they don't change anything. Even at black belt adult, they don't change anything. When you really look at martial arts as a form of self-progression, then it's just you competing against you, and you don't need medals, whether they're participation medals or not, to let yourself know that you're getting better, right? And so that's what I think you should pay more attention to. You can win medals that you don't deserve or that don't hold the same. For example, I think a lot of the reason I started to do this is because when I was a purple belt, doing purple belt adult middleweight, looking back, a lot of the guys that I lose to or would lose to at that time are currently black belt world champions. At this, now they are. So these are super high level guys. And maybe I'm losing to these guys after winning 4 matches and then losing to them in the 5th match at World, not placing at all. And then a guy that I beat regularly, that I've beaten in competition, places 2nd or 3rd in the weight class above me. He only had 2 wins to do it, and then he got thrashed in his next match. But on paper, he has a medal that I don't. Does that mean he's automatically better than me at jiu-jitsu? And that's what I started to question. Like, that's what I'm playing. And then when I would actually win the tournaments, I had to look at the other side of the coin, which was, does this mean anything? Does this mean I'm actually better than anybody but these couple guys that I just competed against? And it didn't. And so when I started to acknowledge that, I stopped worrying about what I was going to post about with the medals that I won. Or, I don't know. I just I won double gold in Chicago for the first time since I was 17 years old in the Chicago Open. So it's 13 years went by before winning double gold again. I had won the open class in Chicago and I won my weight class, but I'd never done them both in the same day, except for when I was 17. And I did that 3 or 4 months ago. And it was interesting how man, I had so much fun getting to compete with my boys, getting to compete with my team. But that was pretty much it. Those medals just go right back into the old display case and they're irrelevant. And it sucks because it's like having money, right? They always say people that have money will say things like, well, money doesn't matter to me. And you can't not care about the medals until you have them, typically, right? Until you start to win stuff and you realize it doesn't change anything. It makes no difference in your life. And sometimes it can even cause you to obsess about things and care about things that you shouldn't, and even hurt yourself in ways that you shouldn't because you cared so much about that medal. Let's move on. I'll talk about this forever. Let's go on. People who leave the tournament after they lost and don't support the team. This was, I guess they're saying they hate people that do that. Yeah, this is something I'm really big on, is when you lose, the only thing after losing that you have control of is your response to losing, right? And so trying your best to not argue with the ref, trying your best to not throw a fit, trying your best to have a good attitude. Sometimes it happens. You're frustrated. You did care about winning that fake gold medal. I cared about it too. Hate losing. You don't want that to happen. Sometimes it just happens. And I think how you respond is going to be very, very important for not just yourself, but your team. I have seen, and I've had this with students that I've yelled at before, but students that will be so frustrated that they lost that they'll try to make the rest of the day about them and be like, well, I'm so mad that I lost. Like, yeah, you already lost. There's nothing we can do about it, but you do have teammates that are still competing. You could help them in any way possible. You can support them. You can record their matches. You can go get them a drink if they need it. You can do any other thing to stop being selfish at that point. As a competitor, it is a selfish act, right? That's part of it. It's like we all get together so the one competitor can win, right? Where all the coaches are there so that one competitor ideally can win. And so competing is definitely the selfish thing. But there's this point where you're done competing. And then it's not selfish anymore. And that's the team aspect of jiu-jitsu. And so, yeah, I think if you get sour grapes when you lose and to a point that you are not able to help your team, I think that is wrong. I will also say, as a coach, if you could have another coach there, somebody to coach, like if you're going to compete that day, if you could have another coach there, I really think it would be helpful for you. It's been helpful for me. I've done a lot of tournaments where I'm just coaching and then running to my mat to compete and then coaching in between. But those aren't as common, and I feel like I have less success at those tournaments. Just energy-wise, it's very exhausting. Let's move on. Ooh. Will Andrew Wiltse ever compete again? So usually I won't talk about anything controversial on the podcast, especially currently controversial things. And so I won't comment on, who knows when this episode comes out, even I don't even know where we'll be at with all this. And this is early October at the time of recording this. But will he ever compete again? I hope so. For context, for people who don't know, Andrew's had some very public mental health issues. And it's been really hard, I think, for a lot of people to watch. I've known him for a very long time, since way before the documentaries ever come out, and gotten to train with him back then. And I'll say this, when it comes to like special jiu-jitsu athletes, I even competed against him as a black belt. But when it comes to special jiu-jitsu athletes, I've competed. You could look up on YouTube. I have a lot of great losses against big names and even some wins against big names. But I promise you, I never felt anyone feel like that in training or in competition. Feel the way that Andrew felt. It's just truly, truly a special jiu-jitsu athlete. Just I promise you, on an incomprehensible level. And people would think the way things have went that like, oh no, that's not true. Oh no, it's just all this stuff is made up about how good he is. And I swear to you guys, on a level that you can't comprehend. I just didn't have anybody I could even compare it to. And so seeing this happen has been really sad. It's been like, and then knowing so many people close, knowing so many people who are even closer to him than I ever was, and seeing how hard it's been on them. Yeah, just the whole entire thing has been really sad. But the answer, will he ever compete again? I really, really, really hope so. I really, really, really would love to see the comeback. And, especially with how public all the bad has been, it would be really cool to see the pendulum swing in the other direction and have the comeback. And that's, there's a lot more that I could comment on it. There's a ton more that I could comment on this, but I don't think I'm going to. I think we'll just leave it at that, answering that question. Next one, should teammates fight teammates in competition? So I have a great story for you guys. I put it on my nephew, not my real nephew, just my jiu-jitsu nephew, to quad gold, the St. Louis Open. And, it's a lot to put on a young man, but man, he was performing really well. He's really bringing it. Pretty dominant all the way up until the open class final of the gi. And in the open class final in the gi, he's got one of his teammates. And this isn't affiliation teammates. This isn't like, oh, he's from TAC Team New York and I'm from TAC Team St. Louis. This is like, we train together every day in the gym together with each other, every day with each other as teammates. And then I'm not there. I'm coaching somebody else, because in my mind, why would they even be competing against each other? We have 2 more divisions for the day. Why would you waste? Why would you waste? I'm not understanding. And sure enough, they go and compete against each other. And the ideally quad gold king, I won't name him, Jaden, he eats an ankle lock for a long time with his teammate that he is competing against, who he trains with regularly. And his ankle's all messed up. And yeah, we still make him go compete. And he wins his weight class, but he only gets 3rd in the no-gi open class. And we kicked him off the team for it. And he's dead now. But that being said, no, I don't think it's a good idea. If you train with the person regularly, I don't think it's a good idea. I'm all for affiliation people competing against each other. I've had friends get bullied out of world medals, literally adult black belt world medals, because they were on an affiliation. They knew for a fact they didn't beaten this person in training, but the dude had seniority. And it's just like, oh, well, you better bow out though. You know, you got to bow out to them because they have seniority. I hate that. If I choose to compete, I think it should totally be okay. I don't think it should be encouraged. I definitely think if you train together regularly, it doesn't make sense because most likely you know who's going to win that match. But then on the other side of it, like, yeah, I don't know. When it's affiliation, I can see doing it if neither of you, because you don't know, like, what if we've never competed against each other? Like, or never even trained with each other. We don't know who's going to win. It's not fair to just say seniority on that, I think. You know, unless both guys agree to it. I really like, for me, I'm like, if I have a teammate, an affiliate teammate that wants to split gold medals back and forth, whether I can beat them or they can beat me, I'm pretty into that at this point in my life because I've had to so many times beat the two best guys from a team in the semis and the finals, and it's incredibly hard to do. Because, like, let's say they game plan for me for the first match when I'm fighting their second best guy in the semis, and I beat him. And then they go, okay, well, in the final, we're going to have our other guy do this. Or other scenario, let's say that I'm having a close match with the guy in the semi, and I'm starting to pull away. It's becoming obvious that I can win this match or I'm going to win. Maybe the guy in the semifinals just tries to wear me out, knowing he's going to lose because his teammate's going to get me a little bit later. I think that is great tournament strategy. And the reason I say that is because it's been done on me and it's worked on me before. And so, yeah, all those, should teammates fight teammates in competition? I think if you train together, absolutely not. I think if you're part of an affiliation, you can. But, yeah, who knows? Most gyms don't mean it when they say all affiliations welcome. Totally agree with this. So many people are like, yeah, our gym is open to anybody. We don't care. Oh, yeah, open mat. Everybody's welcome. But if you go into that open mat, you can feel that you are not welcome. You are not part of the group. You are not wanted there. And most of the time, people that do that, like, they're like, oh, well, why are you here? Well, it's because you said all affiliations welcome. And so this isn't how it needs to be. You don't have to open your gym to people. That is not, I don't think you have to do that at all. But when you do say all affiliations welcome, like to open mat, you should actually let it be open mat and let all affiliations be welcome. Or when it's open mat, it should either be open to who it's open to. Let people know. Oh, no, it's only for our affiliates in town. You will not be welcome if you are not one of our affiliates. Just specify. Let people know, because there are a lot of open mats that are actually open, and people actually want other people coming in because they realize the value in getting different looks. They realize the value in, like, hey, this guy can make us all better. Why wouldn't we want him here every week? He isn't going to steal your moves. The moves that you have are not special. I promise. They're not. He's not stealing them. If anything, he's testing them for you. And if they're good enough that he feels like he needs to steal them, well, then they're awesome. And you keep doing them. But most likely, he's going to only help you. He's going to expose where those moves aren't working. And then that doesn't get exposed in a competition. And so I think that having your affiliation, or having all affiliations welcome, can be so valuable for an open mat. I have had open mat at my gym on Sundays that has been open to everybody for like probably 7 years now. And it's not like it's always packed. It's always pretty full, but it's always such a good crew, and the variety of training partners that you can get are so good. And so, like, versus I could just train with only my guys who play a lot of what I teach them. you know? Or I can go with guys who I've never rolled with before, and I get to kind of experience, okay, this is what they're trying to do. This is how I'm going to try to beat it. Yeah, I just think there's so much value in it. You know, for me, 1 day a week is all we've had to do, but just having a time for other teams to come in. Usually when I go teach a seminar, and when I go in whatever city I'm in, they'll always be like, oh yeah, we hate this group of people, this group of people, this group of people, and this group of people from our town. We don't train with any of those people. I'm like, shoot, maybe you hate them for moral reasons and there's a good reason to do it. But most of the time, the reasons they hate each other are stupid. And if they just trained together, it would help both. It would help both groups. Let's move on. Is it okay to tap to pressure? So a lot of guys will tell you like, oh no, you should never tap to pressure. If you can do a 10 with me, a 10-minute round, and not tap the pressure, and like that's all I'm looking at and all I'm trying to do, then I guess you can make that rule. But I swear to you, since I've been doing the weight distribution stuff from Henry Akins, since I've been really getting good at it, if I want to tap people to pressure, I tap people to pressure. Like a lot. In a way that I didn't think was possible. Because I used to think that like, oh yeah, you should never tap to pressure. You should never tap to pressure when you can still move. But the best pressure that will actually make people tap, when you look at like what the mother's milk actually does, right? And you can say, oh, well, mother's milk's a smother. It really isn't. It's pressure. You know, yes, it is a smother, but like if you cover somebody's nose and mouth with your hand, they just move their hand. They just move their head. You know, they just use their hand to fight it off. The reason that you can cover their nose and mouth with your chest is because they're stuck. It's because they cannot move out of the position, and that's what makes the position brutal. It's not the 1 second of your nose and mouth being covered. It's the fact that it's indefinite. You will be here for all of eternity or until the bell rings. And so in that case, I just think, for instance, I was watching Marigali roll. And it was obviously it was an older clip because he's injured right now. But he was in mount, and I think he had double unders on the guy. And basically, he sits one of his thighs on both of the guy's armpits, and he's like posted on his feet, deadlifting the guy while he's sitting into the guy's neck and armpits. And the guy taps, and the question was like, well, what's this move called? It's pressure. It's all the move is called. You know, we can split hairs and say, oh, no, Josh doesn't know what he's talking about. It's this, you know, it's the super mother's milk, or it's the father's milk. I'll post the father's milk on TikTok for you guys sometime and show you that one. That one's a horrible pressure position. But, you know, it's one of these names. And the truth is it isn't. It's just pressure. It's just that I was able to put all of my weight on you in one very, very specific point, usually on your lungs, on your neck, and you couldn't move at all. If you could move at all, you would shift my weight. But if I can keep you there, it doesn't matter how tough you are. You will just die there. It's, you know, if you could keep me there, it's the same exact thing. I will just die there. If I cannot move and you put all your 180 pounds on me in one point right on my chest, I'm going to die. And so when we're seeing Gordon tap people to pressure, and we're seeing guys get submitted with pressure, it's always thought of as this big strength thing, but it really is not. It is a weight thing. It is putting your weight in the right spot in a way that can hurt, but it's not the excessive pain usually that finishes you. It's the fact that you're stuck with a very, very moderate pain that you have to just endure forever. And so I do think, yes, it's okay to tap the pressure if you're rolling with the right person. I think most people have never even felt pressure, and those people shouldn't tap to pressure, right? You're tapping to your neck getting turned most of the time. You could just stop resisting that position and turn with it, and you wouldn't even be feeling the pain of it, right? It's when you cannot move that tapping to pressure makes sense to me. And I get a lot of that. I get the question about tapping the pressure so much. Okay, next one. I loved this one. This is one of my students, one of my brown belts sent this in. She says, okay, here you go. Do you know of anyone doing steroids at our gym? If so, do you think it is working? So I'm sure I have a few guys. I know I have a few guys that are on like TRT, and absolutely that is working for the specific guys that I'm thinking of, in a sense that not even like, oh, now they're super strong. Not even that. And yes, it definitely does affect strength. It's definitely been big. But it seems like those guys that I know for sure that got on TRT have been able to train way more consistently, right? A lot of times it helps your sleep, and then it definitely helps your recovery. And then those two things has allowed these guys to be more consistent in jiu-jitsu, which then when you really look at it, the other health benefits that they get from that. And I'm sure that there are toxin levels, and I'm sure that there are hormonal things that happen when you get on TRT. I'm not a freaking doctor. I'm sure that there are definitely negatives, but for certain people, I've seen that be a life-changing thing, right? And you cannot be cool with that. And like, this is something I've told you guys, I believe that I will never take TRT. I'm pretty confident that I will never take TRT. And so like, I don't want to say that I'm endorsing this thing, but just for specific people, it's like the one thing that then changes everything. That then they go, you know what? I'm feeling better. Maybe I should start eating better. Maybe I should start dieting. Since I'm training more and I'm still fat in training, I should lose some weight, right? I should show up to jiu-jitsu more. And so I've seen this response, and it's like, is it fair to then be like, oh, well, you can't be on that, or this is, you're on steroids or something like that? I don't know. Feel like it's very similar to, this is less common now, but I remember being young and people being demonized that would get cancer and use marijuana for cancer. And like they'd be like, yeah, I can't eat. And when I smoke weed, then I can eat. And it would be very demonized as like, well, it doesn't matter because smoking weed is wrong. And that's how it was presented. And that was the moral dilemma. But it wasn't like, the result wasn't really thought of as much as like, hey, this dude would probably die without this because he's not eating, and you need food to live. But then this allows him to eat, right? And so sometimes that is kind of the TRT thing. I would say, back to the original question of guys at my gym, I don't know. I don't think I have anybody that's just outright on the good stuff. I really feel like we would all know because I feel like that person would stand out so much physically. But yeah, I would assume that, I know for a fact there's a few people on TRT. I would assume that there are some that I don't know that are on. Then other side of the coin, just so while we're on drug use warnings, I did have one of my guys that was in his 40s. He got on and then almost immediately had some bad reactions to it, I guess you would say. And, caused him to like, yeah, I'm not going to do this, and get off. And so I think he may have taken 2 shots. And, on the other side of things, just, yeah, it can go both ways. Let's go ahead and let's take a quick commercial break, and then we will go ahead and get back into our Q&A for the day. What's up, guys? Josh Mckinney here. We are back telling you about our friends at BJJ Mental Models Premium. So if you do not know, BJJ Mental Models Premium is pretty much the exclusive place to get the best podcasts, the best exclusive podcasts that there really are in jiu-jitsu. What they've done is they've taken all of these really high-level coaches that are really high-level in specific places. Like, for instance, I was just looking at this competition anxiety and this competition mindset course that they have. It's 6 weeks long, or it's 6 episodes long, and the value in those ideas is over the top, and they have tons of these courses throughout all of BJJ Mental Models Premium. And if you decide that you like that idea, you're also going to get yoga for BJJ included. And on top of that, you might decide you want Premium Plus coaching. And I've hinted at this already a few times. You can send in rolling footage. You can send in competition footage if you're in the coaching tier, and request somebody like your old pal Josh Mckinney to review your footage. Say, Josh, what am I not doing when it comes to chest over chest? What am I not doing when it comes to controlling the leg for this leg lock? Why am I getting my guard pass so often? And show me around, and I will literally do a breakdown of your entire round and tell you what you should be doing, and then how you can implement it for the next time that you send in different video footage. And then on top of that, maybe you hear from me too much. Maybe me reviewing your footage isn't the greatest thing for you. I totally get it. Well, if that's the case, they also have 20 black belt world champions reviewing footage. And so you can look at the list. It's an unbelievable list of high-level coaches, high-level competitors, and your boy Josh Mckinney. And so if that interests you, be sure to check out BJJ Mental Models Premium or Premium Plus coaching. Either way, you can get half off of your first month using promo code JOSH. Half off your first month using promo code JOSH. The link is in the description. Let's get back to the episode. And we are back. So I thought a good place on this next one to start was with a little bit of sexism. And the first, I'll do 2. Are these both questions? Yeah, hot take, couple questions. We'll just kind of tie these all together. Okay. So first, someone said, keep it 100. First of all, I always keep it 100. Takes on training with women. Can we really both learn from each other? Then, question 2, why do girls whine when the guys beat them up? And so you can guess that one of these was sent in by a woman and the other was sent in by a man. And so let's talk about the differences between men and women. Let's talk about, I don't know. Let's get into gender studies on the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. So when we look at first question, can you learn from each other when it comes to men and women? And then I think we'll look at these questions combined. Why do women whine when guys beat them up? So I don't have a ton of women that train at my gym. You could even argue that the ones that do have to be pretty insane to train at my gym. And this is because there's no women's class. It is just adult jiu-jitsu. And it is, even though we don't differentiate between competition and hobbyist, I think everybody trains as if we are competing, or trying to get ready to compete, because a lot of the time, a big majority of my people are. I will also say, when it comes to drama in the gym, the amount of drama that I've had in my gym over the years has been so low. Like, you would not believe how little drama I've had in my gym if you are at a gym that has a lot of drama. Now, that being said, there is this correlation that I have found between having a lot of girls at the gym, having a lot of guys at the gym, having that between the two, having both men and women. I believe there are some jiu-jitsu schools that are all girls, and I bet they don't run into these problems either. But it's when you have both. And this is why I wanted to go off both questions, is there's like 4 or 5 statements, I think, about this. And the first thing is like takes on training with women, and can we really both learn from each other? This is the biggest problem, is not even that guys go too hard. On podcasts, they'll always act like that is the big problem. And yes, that's a super dangerous problem that has to be addressed immediately. But I feel like I don't see it as much as the other problem, which the other problem is dudes are always trying to creep on girls, and it takes away from the girl being able to train jiu-jitsu. It takes away from the guy being able to train jiu-jitsu. And oftentimes it creates this environment where certain guys don't like each other because they both have a crush on the same girl. Certain girls don't like each other because usually they're both sleeping with the coach, but they both have a crush on the same guy. Or it's just like you used to date him and now you guys are broken up and we're dating, but he beats me up, right? Because he's significantly better at jiu-jitsu. And the relational aspect of it is where most of the drama comes from. Again, it's always sold like, yeah, it's because guys go too hard in training. And definitely there are guys that go too hard in training. And I will get to that part. But it more has to do with the dating aspect at jiu-jitsu. All then that happens is jiu-jitsu becomes high school, right? Who's sleeping with who? Who is lying about it? Who is telling the truth? Who is, just this drama part of jiu-jitsu. So when you have that aspect, it damages your ability to train together. It damages your ability to learn from each other. You can have guys and girls in the gym. It's just when the culture becomes dating and breaking up, then the drama it's exponential. And I've seen this in so many different schools. It's almost as if it is almost as if some schools you go to, it is to date. Like every single person is single or in a new relationship, and that new relationship is with somebody at that gym. It's just going to create drama. It's just how it be. And so that's me keeping it 100 on the real struggle is and I've even, with like some of the girls that I do have and some of the girls on our team, I've even had the conversation of like, hey, these dudes that are hitting on you are wasting your time. You are trying to be a good competitor and you're trying to not hurt their feelings. A lot of times the girl knows. Girl's like, all right, this dude's being creepy, but I'm going to let him show this stupid guard pass that really doesn't work, really isn't effective, but he's just trying to be helpful so he can be my knight in shining armor, and most girls can even read that. And just being like, hey, I don't care, dude. This is not what I'm here for. I don't like you. And then move on with your life. Go and train jiu-jitsu and enjoy jiu-jitsu for what you're there for. Now, the other side of it is the actual rolling. There is this, when it comes to like guys and girls rolling, I never have problems rolling with girls because I started jiu-jitsu very young. And so I always was partnered with a girl. And so I came up learning how to roll with girls. And it is different in a sense that like it's different in how hard you need to go, but it's also different in a sense of like what works in the women's division is a variation of what works in the men's division, or what works in the men's division is a variation of what works in the women's division. They are not the exact same jiu-jitsu being done all the time. And so sometimes you go in and you just have no idea and you're like, well, I need to fight everything with strength as a guy. You're like, I need to go 100% or this girl will be offended. And sometimes that is the case. If you don't go hard enough, the girl's like, hey, this felt like a waste of both of our times. And they're frustrated. Sometimes it's the opposite. You go with a girl, you go way too hard, and like she's like, man, I feel like I'm going to get hurt, or I did get hurt, right? And so this is one, if you're a guy, I'll just give you a really simple tip that will let you know how hard to go, okay? Is you don't have to use full strength. Just don't stop moving. When you will sit in a position that is like you very heavy. And it's like we're talking about tapping people with pressure, it's very pressure heavy and just like the person can't move. That doesn't mean you go, oh, well, I've got you pinned and I'm better than you, so I'm going to scoot back into your guard. You don't do that. You allow for the next movement. You've basically eliminated all movement. And then what you do is you go, oh, nothing's happening. And as the much bigger, much stronger person, if we're both going to keep doing jiu-jitsu, I need to allow some jiu-jitsu to happen now, right? I don't need to resist everything. And so just having that mindfulness of, hey, are we stuck? Are we stopped? Is it because of me? How do I keep going, right? When I go with girls in my gym, I feel like those tend to be my best cardio rounds because I don't stall at all. And I try to keep a same pace of movement the entire time versus if I'm going to somebody really a lot bigger and stronger than me, I'm going to lay on them in positions where they've got to waste a lot of energy, right? That do actually stall the jiu-jitsu from happening. It's not as helpful for either of us, though, if I'm doing it with somebody, whether it's a girl or a guy, just somebody I'm significantly more physical than. It's better for both of us if we just keep doing jiu-jitsu that way. But then there is the last side, which is for some guys, for a lot of guys, especially smaller guys, they're always pushed to, oh, well, you have to roll with the girls because you're around the same size. Even though you're 40 pounds heavier and it's all muscle, you're around the same size. And so you have to partner together. And then you end up in these situations where, am I going too hard? Am I not going hard enough? And then if you make any mistake, you are the biggest jerk in the world, right? And so this is the answer to all. I really just point out a lot of problems about why, women shouldn't be allowed on the mats. But I'm just joking. I know I can't even joke about stuff without differentiating that I'm joking, but it's like, if you're going to allow women on the mats, pretty much going to be allowing heel hooks in the gi next, there are no rules. So yeah, you can't allow that. But this is the biggest thing is it's okay to not roll with or train with people that you don't want to roll with or train with. And it doesn't have to be this blanket thing of for a guy like, hey, I had a bad experience rolling with a girl, so I just don't roll with girls. You don't have to do that, right? You are allowed to, though. If it makes you uncomfortable, if you're like, yeah, I don't like rolling with girls. My wife doesn't like me rolling with girls. Listen, just in a sense that a girl is allowed to say no to any round that she wants to, so is a guy. On the mats, I think that it is right to have that control of yourself, right? And to say, no, I am not going to do this. I don't want to. Or maybe you don't want to roll with a girl because she's notorious for going super hard and then saying, hey, well, you went too hard against me. Because I see that happen a lot too. It's this thing of like, well, are you allowed to use full strength with reckless abandonment to where you could hurt one of us, but then the other person is not allowed to because of their gender, right? If this is this battle, there may not be a right answer. And so the right answer is maybe we just don't train together. One of us doesn't have to be evil for that to happen, right? You don't have to be some pervert for this girl to not roll with you. Maybe she just doesn't like rolling with you. Maybe you are just too strong. You're just too physical. You're just too robotic when you train. Maybe you stink. Maybe she hates you. Maybe she does get creeped out by you. Regardless, she's allowed to say no. That's like, I used to teach women's self-defense classes, and it was very interesting how often when we would do question and answer, the answer was just don't be afraid to offend that person. It was like the question was, it wasn't how do I protect myself? It was how do I protect myself without hurting feelings? For example, someone was like, there are panhandlers that make me uncomfortable sitting in this road, is for our area. So I knew where she was talking about. And she's like, and I, drive a convertible. I'll have my top down in it. I don't want to offend them by putting my top back up. So are you really valuing somebody's feelings more than you are valuing your own well-being? You are afraid to, regardless, maybe you're crazy and no panhandler would ever hurt you, but you should trust your own intuition. You should trust that and say, hey, I don't care if this offends somebody. It's the same when it comes to rolling live. I do not care if it hurts your feelings that I don't want to roll with you. I care about myself significantly more than I care about your feelings. And so, those are all of my rants. That was me keeping it 100, talking about training with women. Next questions, or next hot take. Ooh, this person has been roasted. I shared this. Wrist locks are a cheap way to submit someone. People were roasting this person. I would say this. I would say a lot of wrist locks, like if you're wrist locking somebody who doesn't know what it is and you're doing it at full speed, then that's cheap. That's not cool. You're a bad training partner. Any other situation, if you're getting wrist locked, it's your fault. Why are you limp wristed right now? Why are you allowing me to bend your wrist while immobilizing your elbow? It's like the point of jiu-jitsu. And then you look at the other fact that sometimes you hit wrist locks off of missing submissions. And so like I'm going for an arm bar. Your arm, you're defending in a way that is protecting your arm, but exposing your wrist. That's on you, brother. And so, wrist locks are definitely not a cheap way to submit someone. I have this fun thing at my gym. I don't know if I've ever said this on the podcast. This is hilarious. So when somebody this is the only hazing that I do like ritually. We haze a lot. We make fun of people a lot at the gym, but it's like, it's cohesive. I get made fun of. They get made fun of. It's back and forth. But there's one thing, it's like this unwritten rule, and I'll tell you guys about it. And I think all jiu-jitsu schools should have this rule. So at most tournaments, when you get to blue belt, you can wrist lock. And so I did this years ago. I was going with I just promoted a guy to blue belt. We were rolling. And he literally was like in smash half guard, and his elbow was against the ground, and his wrist was dangling, just in the air, flapping in the wind. What am I to do? And so I hit him with a little old gooseneck. And he taps, and he's like, oh, was that a wrist lock? Can we do those? And I go, bro, you just got your blue belt. Yes, you can do them. And so then a little bit later in the round, I'm like, this dude is not going to learn his lesson. He's just limp wristed again. So I hit him with another wrist lock. And that time I said, hey, congratulations on your blue belt. Then I probably hit him with a third one in the round. And a ritual was born. So now at my gym, if you get your blue belt, everyone's going to try to wrist lock you on the first round that they do with you. It just be like that. And then when it happens, if you do get wrist locked, then we always will sell you. Congratulations on your blue belt. And so, I think one time I hit, should I say, you know what? He was on the podcast and we talked about how much I abuse him. But our old police officer, Powell Ross, when he was just got his blue belt, and he was a police officer then. So it was only right that I treated him badly. I hit him. I think I got him with like 6 or 7 in the 5-minute round. That was pretty rough. That was unnecessary. Wrist locks are cheap. I'm sorry. Here we go. Ooh, I liked this one. And I do think that there's something to talk about on this. Somebody who was at the IBJJF St. Louis said the blue belts at IBJJF St. Louis looked better than the purple belts. So a few thoughts on that. I didn't watch every blue belt match. I didn't watch every purple belt match. I could see that. There were some really good blue belts there. Maybe the tip of the top blue belt looked better than the average purple belt there, which is common. That's what's interesting about belt levels too, is you will have blue belts that legitimately can beat black belts. That doesn't mean that they're better than the black belt. It just means that disconnected from guard passing, they can create an angle that creates a back take, and then they can finish from the back, right? Does that make him better? And that's what I wanted to kind of talk about, is like, they looked better than the purple belts. What does that mean? Did they do more barimbolos? Did they do more ankle locks? Is that what looked better is in jiu-jitsu? And this is like this interesting thought that I've been having. I've been talking to my students a lot about it. But I think that the criteria for what we consider good at jiu-jitsu is so wrong. It just doesn't make sense. Good at jiu-jitsu is who you beat in competition. Did you submit them? Because that's all that means. Because if you can submit them, then you're good or not. And then who they beat in competition. And that's how people kind of think like, well, that's how we determine who's good. And yes, it's a sport. It's about winning individual matches. And, that is how you see who's good. But there are people that do really good in competition that at a lot of people's version of jiu-jitsu and a lot of people's perspective of jiu-jitsu, they wouldn't consider them good. They wouldn't be like, wow, this person is really impressive. So to me, the most impressive thing, and this is how, if we were actually cared about determining what good was in jiu-jitsu, I would say it would be enough positional sparring where two people positional spar a bunch of different places and then maybe do live rounds too, right? But to me, well-roundedness is one of the most important things to make somebody actually good at jiu-jitsu. And what's weird about that is it actually doesn't pay off in the short run. Well-roundedness doesn't it's not something that seems to, I don't even know how I'd say it, it doesn't usually translate well in the beginning. If you were spending all of your time playing a very specific version of spider guard, all of your time, and getting really good at pulling guard into that position, and I am spending a lot of time on passing, spending a lot of time on playing guard, spending a lot of time on wrestling, and I'm getting better in all those places, but you are only getting better at that. And let's say you get your guard pull and you get to your specific spider guard, I'm probably in trouble, right? At least for right now. Now, here's the thing. Let's say we keep doing this for the next 3 years. We not keep doing it for the next 5 years. I can tell you from a anecdotal standpoint, like from my own perspective, that was something I always did, was focus on being good at the 3 positions, right? Top, bottom, and standing. And it literally didn't pay off until the middle of black belt for me, where I started to get these guys where I would go, oh no, this guy, he's the best De La Riva player. This is all he plays is De La Riva. And then I would get into his De La Riva guard and I would beat it. And I would go, uh-oh, I wonder what he's going to do next. And I would realize he only had De La Riva. That was the only guard that this dude was bringing to the table. It's just he's not used to people beating it. And then the other situation, like, oh, maybe his De La Riva was better than my passing and he does sweep me. His guard passing, he hasn't been focused on enough. And my guard is just as good as my passing. And having that well-roundedness has helped me so much as a competitor. But then when you actually go and train at a gym, I really think what is most impressive, and this is my own version of jiu-jitsu, this is what I think of jiu-jitsu as, is not the guy that can hit 1,000 moves on everybody. He hit everything. He scored points on everybody. He took everybody's back once and he leg locked everybody and he loop choked everybody and then he arm barred everybody and he just did all these things, right? That's always great. But my question is always like, how vulnerable was he? Was he in danger? Because the guy that wasn't in danger, that only, submitted everybody once, but he was never in any danger, to me, is so much more dangerous than the guy who was trading submissions. And maybe he was submitting everybody back and forth, but like not being vulnerable. That's one of the biggest things for me when it comes to being a jiu-jitsu, a grappler. And like what good jiu-jitsu is being well-rounded. Can you put me anywhere and I survive and escape? Can you put me anywhere and I survive and escape and then eventually win? That's a great grappler to me. And so let's move on. If my friend quits jiu-jitsu, do I even want to be his friend? What would I talk about? Life stuff? So this is a funny thing. Normally I would say, no, you don't want to be his friend. But actually, my best friend, me and him have been best friends since, I think I was like 14 or 15. And he did jiu-jitsu for like a year with me, and then eventually he quit, and he's been my best friend since. And I think a big part of it is I wouldn't say a big part of it is because he didn't do jiu-jitsu. I think we'd be best friends regardless. But having somebody removed from the situation, having somebody that they're only everything that they think about and focus about and care about is jiu-jitsu, like having somebody that isn't like that is really nice, because it's really good to have a fresh perspective. Even though I know all of us jiu-jitsu guys are right and we're cool. I used to work at a church, and I would see this with certain people that, especially that would work at the church or just people that were very involved in the church, is they had no friends that weren't part of the religion. Like not a single one. They didn't know anybody. And then what would happen is they would create this world where it was everybody outside of the church versus them, right? And those people, the unsaved, the sinners are trying to get us. And they would hit you with that stuff, right? And then it would be like, bro, one, we're both sinners. Two, a lot of my friends aren't saved. Am I not allowed to be friends with them? They're evil people. They don't seem to be coming at me in the way that you say that they are. Because I actually have a relationship. I actually have a friendship with these people. And it's nice to have somebody that isn't in your echo chamber, even if what we're doing is cool. It can be easy to get carried away. It can be easy to get carried away in the jiu-jitsu space. It can be easy to be like, what we're doing is super important. These medals that we're winning are super important, and they make us good people. And we, you see it with black belts. We should be treated really well. We should be, because we're black belts. We've put in so much. We've paid our dues. And when you have somebody outside of the echo chamber that can say, well, that's weird, you can go, oh, wow. You know what? That is weird. Somebody that's just not so married to it. So maybe keep that one friend that quit jiu-jitsu and talk about life stuff with them. But besides that, you don't need more than one or two friends that don't do jiu-jitsu. Let's move on. We've got two left. And one of them's probably going to be something, both of them are probably going to be something we talk too long about. So how to keep improving when off the mats with a serious injury. This person's injury was that they dislocated their elbow. With a dislocated elbow, there's not a whole lot that you can do training-wise. Any frame that you would build is dangerous. Any post that you would make is dangerous. Any movement with that arm is dangerous. So I would say give you a few thoughts, and it's going to be different for different people depending on skill level. One, and this is Sean Williams' thing. He's super big on it, and I really do think it makes sense, is trying to keep a good routine. Trying to keep, so like maybe you do a lower body workout one of the days that you would normally do jiu-jitsu, and then the other day that you would normally do jiu-jitsu, you still show up to class and watch, and you even ask questions during that time. And I know it's boring for people, and people are like, no, that wouldn't work. I have a guy, and he was a blue belt when he tore his ACL, and then he got surgery, and take a year to recover, like actually get back from an actual completely torn ACL. And so in that time, he says, I'm gonna just keep coming in. His daughter trained. He's like, I'm just gonna keep coming in. And so he keeps coming in, and he would even ask questions a lot of times, especially when I would teach guard passing or something, he would ask questions. And then the craziest thing happened. When he came back to the gym, I thought, I think this guy got better at jiu-jitsu. And then some of the other guys, some of the better guys go, how does it feel like he was almost improving at the same rate that I was improving? And I was here training and he was just watching. And I think a lot of it just had to do with keeping the routine and being mindful. You keep caring and you keep that little bit of progression. If you could know a little more about a guard pass, if you could know a better detail about this or about that and really care about it and really think, well, I'm going to put that in when it's time for me to go back. And then you already have that routine where you can stop your lifts now and get back to your training. It's much easier to hit that, to do that, to do it that way. And then obviously though, it's going to depend on the severity of an injury and what that injury is. Because there are some injuries you can do certain types of training with the right training partners. But it just depends on the person. And I would say, especially early on, it's almost not worth trying to train because you don't have enough control of what's going on to keep yourself from getting injured. As you get to a higher belt, you'll start to be able to control situations more, only roll with specific people, and kind of be able to still progress while on the mats while injured. But at first, trying to progress off the mats while injured. And I think you can do instructionals if you like them. You can watch competition footage if you like it. But I think for most people, one of the most effective things you could do is just go watch class, ask questions as you have them. If your injury allows, drill during the class. But those are my thoughts. Let's go to the last question. To prep for competitions, do you select easier rounds to gain confidence or all heaters? So, man, this is such a good question, and it's so impossible to answer because for almost everybody, they think of each competition as its own individual thing. Okay? I have a competition getting ready for. I'm going to do a 6-week camp and I'm going to get in really good shape and then I'm going to do this competition. And then this becomes this habit. And so now they book a competition 2 months from now. They get sick and like, oh man, we're just getting back to training with 4 weeks left. Well, I don't know how to do a 4-week camp. I don't think I can do a 4-week camp. And then it creates this situation where they're thinking that the little bit of training that they did is what made them win or lose the tournament. Most of the time, the weeks leading up to a tournament, for most jiu-jitsu athletes, you're already in shape most of the time. You're already training hard most of the time because we train hard year round. We do live rounds from the feet year round. It's all a tournament is. It's just a little scarier, right? But so often I'll see guys and then they'll go, well, I didn't get my 6-week camp and I have 3 weeks. So I'm going to put all 6 weeks of the camp into these next 3 weeks. And they only hurt their chances of winning because they're just too exhausted when it comes to the tournament. If you are constantly noticing, if you're like feeling like you're having cardio losses in tournaments, if you feel like you're gassing way harder than you usually are, and you like, especially like, I feel like I could do 50 rounds in the gym, but I can't do 1 round in the tournament, it's most likely that you're going in to compete overtrained. People cannot comprehend what that means because the top level of jiu-jitsu athletes are on steroids. And so if you do what steroid athletes do as a natural athlete, you will not get even close to the same result. They are able to do what they do because they are on steroids. They are able to recover after training the day before because they are on steroids for no other reason. It has nothing to do with toughness. It has nothing to do with anything else. It's because they are taking something from outside of their body, putting it into their body, and it allows them to do this. As a natural athlete, you have to look at it differently. You cannot do that. And honestly, even as a steroid athlete, most of the time, those guys are probably still going in overtrained. So in 2022, I broke my ankle at Pans. And then a week later in a match, again, same ankle. And then I went 3 weeks where I did one training session in those 3 weeks, and then I had another tournament. And in that tournament, I still was limping around. I couldn't warm up how I normally do because I couldn't jog. And I wasn't even that I was like, oh, I wasn't confident or I was confident. I wasn't even thinking about that. I was just thinking like, hey, the jiu-jitsu that I have today, it's either good enough or it's not. It has nothing to do with the training. I haven't trained in a month, right? Literally for an entire month, the only things that I had done is had 2 matches, both of which ended with me getting my ankle broken, and one training session the Wednesday before the tournament where I went, okay, if I can get warm enough and start moving, then I can compete this weekend. And I performed better than I'd ever performed, beat bigger names I'd ever beaten. And it was off of no training. And then when I thought back to the other side of the coin, I said, man, there were all these times that I've been in the best shape of my life, and I've had the perfect mindset, and I've done the perfect camp, and I've went out first round. And when I realized that those two things weren't correlated, that the 6-week camp where I'm posting iron sharpens iron on Instagram is so irrelevant. And I'm actually putting so much faith into that it's actually screwing me up. The times that I had done best in competition is when I would just go out and do jiu-jitsu, just go out and compete with the jiu-jitsu that I had that day. Like, okay, well, I don't usually do this move, but this is the situation we're in. And in the gym, I would go for it. So I'm just going to do what I do in the gym. And so often people think I need to be Shark Tanked and I need to do bad positions and I need to do this and I need to do that. But those don't translate at all into a real match. Being Shark Tanked and losing over and over again, yes, if you're going out and you're winning every single one of these first point matches with new partners coming in, then you're probably that good and you do need that to push your cardio. But most people are just getting beat up. What is that training you for? To lose. Like, oh, well, I can be really tired and survive with a guy on my back. How about not letting them get there? How about escaping that position? Right? So often people think that there is going to be this vision quest that happens over the training camp. And it is not that way. You are just each day, you're trying to get better. You can try to get better at jiu-jitsu. You can try to get better like at physicality, having a little bit better of cardio. You can try both of those two things. But most of the time, the training and leading up, especially as we get really close, the 2 weeks out, the week out, most people would do better not training at all. They would literally just taking those 2 weeks completely off, showing up to the gym and stretching a little bit, just flowing a little bit, not doing any live rounds. So then when they actually go out for competition, they can go hard. Because competition, I know this, it's crazy to people that when you are training for 3 5-minute matches, that doing 20 5-minute rounds from the feet does not translate directly. It's crazy to people that people really like, well, I'll just do 35-minute rounds. It's not what we're doing here. You're training for something different. We're not doing a marathon, we're doing a sprint. And it's a sprint where your performance in those 5 minutes is all that matters. And so getting better at recovering in between, most guys would literally be better off on that day, not doing the 30 rounds, doing 3 5-minute rounds as hard as they can, starting from the feet with the goal of actually winning. Because that translates into competing so much more. It's just most people, their anxiety it makes them waste energy on stuff. And that's the same in the gym. Their anxiety, their fear that they're not good enough will cause them to train hard on the Wednesday before the tournament. And they don't get any better in that training session. All they do is they dig into their recovery a little bit, a little more beat up, right? And then it's so much harder to snap your fingers and perform at full speed when it's time to perform at full speed. And so it's not always about like doing easy rounds, doing hard rounds, in which you should be doing. It's just about understanding like, hey, I am taking the jiu-jitsu that I have into this tournament. That's all I have. I'm not taking the hard rounds that I've done. I'm not taking any of this other stuff. It's about performing in that moment, staying in that moment, and just keeping jiu-jitsu happening. And so I would say if I'm prepping for a tournament, 90% of my rounds or more. If I'm injured, 100% of my rounds. But if I'm, prepping for a tournament at the absolute low end, 85% of my rounds are with guys that I can beat easily and are not going to risk injury and are not going to push me too hard because I'm trying to get reps of winning. I'm trying to practice my stuff that works and then what they can throw up at me. And then when I am doing those other 10, 15% of rounds with legitimate high-level guys, those are competition prep. Those aren't get better at jiu-jitsu rounds. Those are start from the feet, work your strategy, work your cardio, work everything. See if you can do an actual competition round and see if you can win that. When you do it that way, it takes the guesswork out of, am I wasting my energy? Am I just doing, should I be Shark Tanked 100 times? It's like, no, if you think that is going to help you, just show me the result on it. Everybody that I know that does that, they get sick before the tournament. They do. It's like, or they get injured before the tournament. It's because they train way too hard in the lead up. It's like people forget that the goal is to perform that day. So why do something that causes injury or sickness before that day? Your goal should just be to be as healthy as possible on that day. It's bizarre, this disconnect for most jiu-jitsu people. And I know I always blame steroids, but I really think it's just because so many guys are on and they have people that aren't on convinced that like, oh yeah, we're all natural. I'm natural with you. And then it causes them to be like, oh, I always reference this. If you want to look up how to get better at jiu-jitsu, there are hundreds, maybe thousands of high-level coaches that have great advice. But the top thing that you will see on YouTube is a multiple-time world champion, because that's all that matters, telling you that the best way to get good at jiu-jitsu is to train jiu-jitsu 3 times a day. That's what we'll get. What is that model based off of? That model is based off of steroids. You cannot train 3 times a day as a natural athlete. You just can't. I mean, actually train. I guess you could show up 3 times a day, but you're not going to do that. You're not going to train 21 times a week as a natural guy. And that disconnect, I think, is what hurts a lot of people. But that is all I have for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Thank you guys for all the hot takes, all the questions. I know we went long on this one, which people tend to like when we get so many different topics. And like I said, next week, if you're easily offended, do not listen to the episode. Do not tune in. Even if you're not easily offended, you're going to be offended. So if being offended causes you physical pain, like a lot of the commenters on YouTube, I wouldn't listen to next week's episode. But yeah, besides that, that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode, and I hope that today's episode helps you guys suck just a little bit less at jiu-jitsu. Have a great day, guys.